You're exhausted from trying to save a world you didn't break. That heavy guilt you carry wasn't born inside your conscience. It was injected there by the exact same executives who profit directly from the collapse. Here's something that's been bugging me. That little sting of guilt you get when you leave the AC running or toss a bottle instead of finding a bin. That feeling has a birthday, and it's younger than you think. It showed up in 2004 when an oil company, an actual oil company, paid an ad agency to turn carbon footprint into a household phrase. They even built you a calculator so you could score your own sins. Here's the thing that gets me. That guilt didn't come from nowhere. It got manufactured on purpose by people who needed you looking at yourself instead of looking at them. And it worked. Millions of us walk around low-key, ashamed of being alive, like breathing is a crime against the planet. While a tiny handful of companies keep doing the real damage completely off camera. So look, give me the next 10 minutes. Because I want to show you exactly how that guilt got installed in your head and how to rip it back out. Here's the biology part, and it's going to sound backwards. Human brains did not evolve to comprehend slow, systemic, atmospheric degradation. We evolved to hunt for a face. We're wired to find a clear cause for our pain, a predator, a rival tribe, the guy who stole your food. That mechanism kept our ancestors alive. Find the threat, point a finger, and deal with it. But climate damage doesn't have a face. It's an abstract aggregate of millions of decisions made over a century by corporate subsidiaries with acronyms for names and no faces attached. So the human brain, starving for an antagonist, desperate for someone to blame for the existential dread it feels, does something strange. It turns the finger around, it starts pointing at you. This is where corporate manipulation hooks perfectly into human vulnerability. When you cannot punch the ghost poisoning the well, you start policing the people drinking the water. Eventually, you police yourself. You become your own warden in a psychological prison built by someone else. We are taught to flinch at a plastic bag, yet lack the cognitive bandwidth to process millions of gallons of spilled crude oil. The scale is too massive, the true perpetrators too insulated. So we shrink our worldview until our own microscopic flaws look like the root cause of the apocalypse. I know what you're thinking. But every recycled bottle helps. Sure, it's a comforting story, but let's be fiercely stoic, strip away the sentimentality, and look at the brutal math. One widely cited report traced global emissions back to their ultimate source. They didn't look at consumers, they looked at extractors. They found that a minuscule group of fossil fuel producers, fewer than 100 entities, are directly linked to more than 70% of all industrial emissions since the late 1980s. 70%. The vast majority of the heat trapping the globe comes from a group of executives you could fit inside a mid-sized gymnasium. And there you are, standing in your kitchen, meticulously washing out a peanut butter jar with a teaspoon so it doesn't contaminate the recycling bin. You're trying to bail out a sinking supertanker with that teaspoon standing next to a hole in the hull the size of a cathedral. The sickest irony? The executives who drilled that hole and profited billions are the exact same people who sold you the teaspoon. The less actual power we have to fix this at the top, the harder we work on ourselves at the bottom. No real say in national energy policy? Fine, we will obsess over our grocery bags. No vote on how a factory dumps its toxic waste? Fine, we will religiously track our own eco-score. That is not virtue, that is a pressure valve, engineered to bleed off your revolutionary anger by turning it into domestic anxiety. There's a deep reason this false guilt sticks so hard. The human mind cannot stand random, senseless suffering. When a sudden flood wipes out a valley or a heat wave kills thousands, the brain flat out refuses to file that trauma under bad luck. It needs a narrative. It demands a why. For centuries, religion provided that narrative. A drought meant you sinned. We haven't evolved past that. When the real why behind ecological collapse is buried under decades of corporate lobbying, the mind reaches for the nearest story. It's your fault. You didn't try hard enough. You flew too much, consumed too much. Suddenly, senseless atmospheric physics has a plot. And congratulations, you have been cast as the character who screwed it all up. Some systems shove this down your throat through greenwashed ad campaigns, gamifying your shame. Others do something darker. They say absolutely nothing. No accountability, no answers. just a deafening, rehearsed silence from every institution with the power to fix this. In that vast silence, people build their own explanations. Human nature dictates that we usually choose the harshest explanation for ourselves, because at least a harsh story is something you can control. Blaming yourself feels like possessing agency. Accepting that you are powerless against a machine that doesn't care if you live or die is a terror most people will do anything to avoid. I'll be honest, I have a closet full of things ordered without thinking and a phone full of flight confirmations. I'm not exempt. But somewhere recently, the question flipped. It stopped being, why do I feel like this decay is my fault? And became, why does a faceless system get to make me feel this heavy and walk away clean? Look, I'm not saying you are broken for feeling this eco-anxiety. You are reacting exactly the way your primate brain was built to react to a perceived threat. There is a clinical term for what is being weaponized against you: diffusion of responsibility. Picture a bar fight, a dozen people watching, glass breaking, but nobody calls the cops. Why? Because every single person assumes someone else already did. Or picture a car with a dead battery blocking a shared driveway. Nobody pushes it, because it's everyone's problem. The psychological rule is brutal. The more people involved in a crisis, the less any single individual feels the acute burden to act. Now stretch that across an entire global economy. Spread the responsibility for the Earth's climate across 100 fossil fuel companies, paralyzed governments, and 8 billion atomized consumers. Something ugly happens. The responsibility doesn't vanish. It drains downhill. It follows the path of least resistance, flowing away from the heavily protected apex predators at the top, down to the one group with the least financial and political power. You. If you are genuinely bone-deep tired of trying to be a good enough person for the planet, hear this. That exhaustion is not a personal moral failure. That is a global system operating exactly the way it was quietly engineered to work. Your exhaustion isn't a tragic side effect. Your exhaustion is the product. A tired, guilty, hyper-individualized population is far too busy analyzing its own garbage to ever look up and dismantle the machine. There is a second psychological term explaining the quiet nihilism settling over this generation. It explains why so many have stopped trying to change the macro structures of society. It's called learned helplessness. In 1960s research, scientists found that subjects repeatedly exposed to a painful situation they couldn't escape eventually stopped trying to escape at all. Even when doors were thrown wide open, they just took the pain. Their brains had been physically rewired to believe action was pointless. Swap the laboratory for modern civic life. Write passionate letters to a conglomerate. Watch nothing change. Protest a pipeline. Watch the police clear the camp, and watch it get built anyway. Vote for a sweeping climate policy and watch it die a slow death in a committee funded by lobbyists. Do that enough times, and your brain writes a new permanent rule. Don't bother with the big stuff. The game is rigged, it never works. So all that human energy gets violently redirected into the one tiny arena where you feel a measurable result. Your own rigid habits, your own manufactured guilt, your own microscopic, controllable universe. If you need proof this isn't just theory, look around. Eco-anxiety support groups and specialized climate grief counselors have popped up in every major city. They are treating this dread like the clinical trauma it actually is. People are literally showing up to therapy, weeping over an atmospheric crisis they did not create and cannot personally undo. That is not emotional weakness. That is a nervous system doing the only thing it has left, turning the violence of the world inward. We know who built the architecture of your guilt and exactly why they needed you to carry it. They made you the scapegoat so they could remain kings. But true Stoicism teaches us that we only suffer because we agree to carry burdens that do not belong to us. We surrender our peace to things outside our control. Civilization was never supposed to be a purity test for the working class. It was built for one pragmatic job: to cut down on human suffering that doesn't need to happen. Heat waves that don't need to kill, storms that don't need to wipe out neighborhoods because a corporation lobbied against a seawall to save a fraction on their taxes. You are not a virus on this planet. You are not the villain of this historical narrative, and you were never supposed to carry a multinational company's carbon math on your back like your own original sin. The people with actual power figured out it's infinitely cheaper to sell you shame than to change a single profitable supply chain. So stop auditioning for sainthood one recycled grocery bag at a time. Save your energy, kill the guilt, forge that shame into cold anger, and point it where it belongs. Up. Point it at the boardrooms hiding behind your personal conscience. You didn't build this mess, you don't owe it your sanity, and you certainly don't owe it your peace of mind. If this rearranged something in your head, hit like. Tell me in the comments where you first bought into the guilt, the straw, the flight, the meat, whatever it was, and subscribe because we're just getting started on tearing these stories apart.